The mountain was always hungry. It breathed fire and smoke, and it swallowed men whole. Do-hyun had learned this truth when he was 12 years old, the day the Drakari raiders tore apart his colony ship and dragged him down into the darkness. Now he was 23. 11 years in the dragon mines had turned him from a frightened boy into something harder, something quieter. His hands were rough with scars. His lungs burned from the toxic air, but his eyes still held a light that the Drakari could not understand, a small flame that refused to die. The mines stretched deep beneath the volcano on the planet Korath. Thousands of humans worked here, digging for voidstone, the black crystal that powered Drakari starships. The work was brutal. The tunnels were hot enough to cook flesh. Cave-ins happened every week. And the overseers, tall reptilian creatures with scales like rusted iron, showed no mercy to those who fell behind. Do-hyun had watched many friends die in these tunnels. He had carried their bodies to the disposal pits. He had learned to keep his face empty and his thoughts hidden. Survival meant silence. Survival meant patience. Survival meant waiting for the right moment. That moment had not come yet, but Do-hyun knew it would. He worked in Tunnel 7 with his closest friend, a man named Siwoo. They had arrived on the same slave transport 11 years ago. Two terrified children clinging to each other in the dark. Now they were brothers in everything but blood. Siwoo was thinner than Do-hyun, weaker in body but stronger in spirit. He told jokes even when there was nothing to laugh about. He shared his food even when he was starving. He was the reason Do-hyun had not given up long ago. But the mines were breaking Siwoo. His cough had grown worse over the past months. His hands shook when he held his pickaxe. Do-hyun had begged him to slow down, to rest, to let him take on extra work. Siwoo always refused. "If I stop moving, I die," Siwoo said one night, his voice barely a whisper. "At least this way, I die standing." Do-hyun wanted to argue. He wanted to tell Siwoo that there was another way, that he had been planning something for years, but the words stuck in his throat. The plan was not ready. The timing was not right, and he could not risk Siwoo's life on a half-finished dream. So he said nothing, and he hated himself for it. The overseer of Tunnel 7 was a Drakari named Vrakos. He was larger than most of his kind, with yellow eyes that gleamed with cruelty. He enjoyed hurting humans. He called it discipline, but everyone knew the truth. Vrakos simply liked to watch them suffer. On the day everything changed, Siwoo collapsed. It happened during the afternoon shift. The heat was worse than usual, and the air was thick with sulfur. Siwoo had been swinging his pickaxe for hours without rest. Do-hyun saw his friend stumble. He saw Siwoo's legs give out. He saw him fall to the ground like a puppet with cut strings. Do-hyun dropped his tools and ran to him. He grabbed Siwoo's shoulders, shook him gently, called his name. Siwoo's eyes were open but unfocused. His breathing was shallow and fast. "Get up," Do-hyun begged. "Please, you have to get up." But Siwoo could not move. His body had finally betrayed him. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the tunnel. Vrakos approached, his clawed feet clicking against the stone. The other slaves looked away. They knew what was coming. "What is this?" Vrakos hissed. His voice was like gravel scraping against metal. "Another broken tool?" "Another broken tool." Do-hyun looked up at the overseer. His heart was pounding, but he forced himself to speak calmly. "He just needs rest. A few hours. He can work again tomorrow." Vrakos laughed. It was an ugly sound, full of contempt. "Rest? Humans do not rest. Humans work, or humans die. That is the only law here." He reached down and grabbed Siwoo by the throat. Siwoo made a weak sound, his hands clawing uselessly at the Drakari's scaled arm. "No!" Do-hyun lunged forward, but two guards seized him and threw him to the ground. He struggled against them, screaming, but they were too strong. Vrakos looked at Do-hyun with something like amusement. "You care about this one? Good. Then watch closely. Let this be a lesson." He squeezed. Siwoo's body jerked once, twice. Then it went still. Vrakos dropped him like garbage. He wiped his claws on his armor and turned away. Back to work, he ordered the other slaves. Anyone else who falls will join him. The guards released Do-hyun. He crawled to Siwoo's side and held his friend's body. Siwoo's eyes were still open, staring at nothing. His face looked peaceful, almost relieved. The pain was finally over. Do-hyun did not cry. He had forgotten how to cry years ago. But something inside him cracked a wall he had built around his heart to keep himself sane. Behind that wall was rage, pure, burning, endless rage. He worked through the rest of the shift in silence. He ate his evening ration without tasting it. He lay in his cell and stared at the ceiling while the other slaves slept. And when the volcano rumbled at midnight, shaking dust from the walls, Do-hyun rose from his bed. He had spent years memorizing the mine's layout. Every patrol route, every shift change, every crack and gap too small for Drakari bodies. He knew about the forbidden upper caverns, the ones that led to the volcanic peaks where the sky-blaze dragons lived. The Drakari told stories about those dragons, ancient beasts so powerful that even the Empire feared them. The slaves were warned never to go near the upper tunnels. Death waited there, the overseers said. Certain death. Do-hyun no longer cared about death. Death had taken everything from him. Now he would take something back. He slipped through the shadows like a ghost. He squeezed through passages that should have been too narrow. He climbed when his muscles screamed and crawled when he could no longer stand. By dawn, he had reached the forbidden caves. Behind him lay chains and suffering. Ahead lay fire and darkness and the unknown. Do-hyun did not look back. He stepped into the mountain's throat and let it swallow him whole. The upper caverns were a maze of death. Sharp black rocks cut Do-hyun's hands and knees as he climbed. Steam burst from cracks in the walls without warning, hot enough to blister skin. The air grew thinner with every step, and his lungs fought for each breath. But Do-hyun kept climbing. He had no food. His only water came from licking condensation off the cave walls. The darkness was so complete that he had to feel his way forward, trusting his fingers to find holds that his eyes could not see. Sometimes the path went up. Sometimes it went sideways. Sometimes he had to squeeze through gaps so tight that he feared he would get stuck and die alone in the dark. 3 days passed, or maybe 4. Time lost meaning in the endless black. On what might have been the 4th day, Do-hyun's strength finally failed. He collapsed against a boulder, too weak to move. His throat was dry as sand. His muscles had stopped responding. He lay there in the darkness and waited for death to find him. He thought about Siwoo. He thought about the colony ship, about his parents who had died in the Drakari attack, about the life he might have had if the universe had been kinder. He thought about all the slaves still trapped in the mines below thousands of humans who would live and die in chains, never knowing freedom. "I'm sorry," he whispered to no one. "I wasn't strong enough." A light appeared in the darkness. At first, Do-hyun thought he was dreaming, or dying. The light was soft and orange, like a small fire. It moved toward him slowly. And he heard footsteps, human footsteps, not the heavy click of Drakari claws. A woman emerged from the shadows. She was thin and ragged, her clothes made from animal skins and scraps of cloth. Her face was scarred, and her hair was wild. But her eyes were sharp and alive. She crouched beside him and pressed a water flask to his lips. "Drink slowly," she said. Her voice was rough from disuse, but her Korean was clear. "Too fast will make you sick." Do-hyun drank. The water was cool and clean, sweeter than anything he had ever tasted. When he tried to speak, she shushed him. "Save your strength. Questions can wait." She helped him to his feet and led him through the tunnels. Her torch revealed walls covered in strange markings, old symbols that Do-hyun did not recognize. They walked for what felt like hours, climbing higher and higher, until they emerged into a vast cavern filled with pale blue light. The cavern was beautiful. Crystals grew from the walls like frozen waterfalls, glowing with inner fire. A stream ran through the center, fed by melting ice from somewhere above. Plants grew here, real plants, green and alive, things Do-hyun had not seen in 11 years. The woman sat him down by the stream and gave him dried meat and a handful of berries. He ate slowly, his body remembering what real food tasted like. "My name is Nari," the woman said. "I escaped the mines 5 years ago." Do-hyun stared at her. 5 years. She had survived alone in these caves for 5 years. "How?" he asked. Nari smiled. It was a tired smile, but real. "The same way you did. I climbed. I refused to die. And I found something the Drakari forgot about." She pointed upward, toward the cavern ceiling. "The dragons." Do-hyun's blood went cold. "The Skyblaze dragons? They're real?" Do-hyun's blood. "They're real? Very real, and very dangerous." Nari sat across from him, her legs crossed. "But they're not what the Drakari say they are. The overseers tell slaves that the dragons are mindless beasts, monsters that kill everything they see." "That's a lie." She told him the truth. Long ago, before the Drakari came to Korath, another species had lived here. They were peaceful people, artists and builders, and they had formed a bond with the Skyblaze dragons. The dragons were intelligent, ancient creatures, with minds as deep as oceans. They chose partners from among the people. And together, they built a civilization that lasted 10,000 years. Then the Drakari arrived. They came with warships and weapons. They slaughtered the peaceful people and tried to enslave the dragons. But the adult dragons could not be controlled. They were too powerful, too proud, so the Drakari killed most of them and took their eggs. They raised the young dragons in chains, breaking their spirits, turning them into weapons of war. The surviving adults fled to the highest peaks of the volcano. They hid in the forbidden caverns, grieving for their lost children, burning with rage against their conquerors. For 800 years, they had waited. Waited for what? Do-hyun asked. Nari looked at him with strange intensity. For someone worthy. The dragons don't trust easily, not anymore. But they remember the old bond. They remember what it felt like to have partners, equals, friends. They're waiting for someone who understands their pain, someone who knows what it's like to be in chains, Do-hyun said slowly. Nari nodded. The Drakari could never bond with them. They see everything as property, as tools to be used. But humans. She paused. Humans know how to suffer. And more importantly, humans know how to hope. Do-hyun thought about Siwoo. He thought about the thousands of slaves in the mines, still hoping for rescue that would never come. He thought about the rage burning in his chest, the same rage he had seen in Nari's eyes. "The Skyblaze King," he said. "The one the Drakari fear most. Is he still alive?" Nari's face grew serious. "Thanos. Yes. He lives. He's the oldest and most powerful of them all. He lost his mate and all his children to the Drakari. He hasn't accepted a rider in 800 years. She leaned closer. "But I've watched him. I've seen him circle the summit on moonless nights, looking down at the mines. He sees the slaves. He sees their suffering. And I think he's waiting for someone brave enough to ask for his help." Do-hyun stood. His legs were still weak, but his heart was strong. "Take me to him." Nari studied him for a long moment. She saw the scars on his hands, the hollowness in his cheeks, the fire in his eyes. She saw a man who had lost everything and had nothing left to fear. "It might kill you," she warned. "Thanos has burned 100 Drakari who tried to approach him. He won't trust easily." "I don't want his trust," Do-hyun said. "I want to give him something better. I want to give him a chance to fight back." Nari's smile returned wider this time, almost fierce. "Then rest tonight. Tomorrow, we climb to the summit." She showed him a small cave where he could sleep. Do-hyun lay on a bed of soft moss and stared at the glowing crystals above. For the first time in 11 years, he felt something other than despair. He felt hope. Tomorrow, he would meet a god, and together, they would burn the empire to ash. The summit was a place of fire and wind. Do-hyun climbed the final steps with burning lungs and trembling legs. Nari walked beside him, silent and watchful. The air was thin here, and each breath felt like swallowing knives. Above them, the sky was red. Korath's twin suns hung low on the horizon, painting the clouds with blood and gold. The volcano's peak rose like a broken crown, and from somewhere within came a glow brighter than any star. "The chamber is through there," Nari said, pointing to a gap in the rocks. "I can't go with you. Earthanos doesn't know me. If I enter his space, he might see it as an attack." Do-hyun nodded. His heart was pounding so hard, he could feel it in his throat. "What do I do? What do I do? Be honest, be humble, and whatever you do, don't show fear." Nari gripped his shoulder. "The dragons can sense lies. They can feel what's in your heart. If you go in there with tricks or hidden motives, you'll die. But if you show him who you really are, he might still kill me," Do-hyun finished. "Yes, but at least it will be a fair death." Do-hyun looked at the gap in the rocks. Orange light spilled from it like liquid fire. He could feel heat radiating from within. Not painful yet, but growing stronger. This was the point of no return. Once he stepped through, there would be no going back. He thought about Siwoo. He thought about his promise to himself in the darkness of the mines. He thought about all the people still waiting below, still hoping, still suffering. Then he walked into the fire. The chamber was vast. The walls were made of black volcanic glass, smooth as mirrors, reflecting the flames that danced across every surface. The ceiling rose so high it disappeared into shadow, and in the center of it all, coiled around a pillar of stone, was the Skyblaze King. Earthanos was enormous. His body was covered in scales that shimmered like molten gold. His wings were folded against his sides, each one large enough to cover a Drakari warship. His head was crowned with horns that curved backward like ancient weapons. And his eyes, were the color of burning suns. Ancient and terrible, and full of endless grief, the dragon lifted his head as Do-hyun entered. Those golden eyes fixed on the small human, and the chamber filled with a sound like thunder, a low, rumbling growl that shook the stones beneath Do-hyun's feet. Fire gathered in Earthanos' throat. The heat became unbearable. Do-hyun felt his skin begin to blister, felt his clothes start to smoke. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to hide, to escape before the flames consumed him. Instead, he knelt. He pressed his forehead to the hot stone floor and closed his eyes. If he was going to die, he would die with dignity. He would not beg, he would not flee. He would face the dragon as Siwoo had faced the overseer standing. Or in this case, kneeling. With his head held high. The flames did not come. Do-hyun felt the heat fade slightly. He heard the rumble quiet to a questioning tone. Slowly, carefully. He raised his head. Earthanos was watching him. The fire still glowed in the dragon's throat, but it had not been released. Those ancient eyes studied Do-hyun with something that might have been curiosity. "I am not here to fight you," Do-hyun said. His voice was steady, though his hands shook. "I am not here to capture you or use you. I am here because I have nowhere else to go." The dragon said nothing, but he did not attack. Do-hyun continued. "My name is Do-hyun. I was taken from my people when I was 12 years old. I have spent 11 years as a slave in the mines below this mountain. I have watched my friends die. I have been beaten and starved and broken in every way a person can be broken." His voice cracked, but he kept going. 4 days ago, the Drakari killed my closest friend. His name was Siwoo. He was kind and brave and good, and they murdered him like he was nothing, like he was garbage. Tears ran down Do-hyun's face, now the first tears he had shed in years. "I came here because I couldn't stay down there anymore. I came here because I would rather die trying to be free than live another day in chains." Earthanos lowered his massive head until his eyes were level with Do-hyun's. The heat from his breath washed over the young man like a desert wind. "I know what they did to your people," Do-hyun said. I know they killed your mate. They took your children. They turned your kind into weapons. He met the dragon's gaze without flinching. We have the same enemy. We've both lost everything to them. I'm not asking you to serve me or obey me. I'm asking you to help me burn them down. For a long moment, nothing happened. The chamber was silent, except for the crackle of flames. Then Erthanos spoke. His voice was not sound. It was something deeper, something that resonated directly in Do-hyun's mind. It felt like the movement of mountains, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. You are small, the dragon said. Small, and brief, and fragile. Your kind lives for only a moment, then fades like sparks from a fire. Why should I trust you? Because I have nothing to offer you except the truth, Do-hyun answered. I am small. I am weak. I will probably die before this is over. But I would rather spend my short life fighting than waste it in chains. He paused. And because the Drakari fear you, if they fear you, then you have power over them. And I want to see that fear in their eyes before I die. Erthanos made a sound that might have been a laugh, a deep rumble that shook dust from the ceiling. Your fire is old, the dragon said, older than mine. It has burned through centuries of pain and come out brighter on the other side. He lowered his head even further, until his great golden snout almost touched Do-hyun's chest. I have waited 800 years for someone worthy. I had given up hope. Then we're the same, Do-hyun said. I gave up hope too. But here I am anyway. Fire washed over him, not burning this time, but warm, almost gentle. It wrapped around his body like a blanket, sinking into his skin, filling him with strength he had never known. The dragon was testing him, reading his heart, searching for any trace of deception or cruelty. He found none. Very well, little flame, Erthanos said. I will carry you. I will fight beside you. But know this. If you betray me, if you become like them, I will end you myself. If I become like them, Do-hyun said, I will deserve it. Erthanos pulled back his head and spread his wings. The chamber filled with golden light. And for the first time in 8 centuries, the Skyblaze King had a rider. Do-hyun climbed onto the dragon's back and felt the ancient power thrumming beneath him. He looked down at his scarred hands, the hands of a slave. Soon, they would be the hands of a liberator. Let's begin, he said, and the dragon rose into the sky. 6 months changed everything. Do-hyun trained with Erthanos in the high peaks, learning to fly, to fight, to communicate with his mind instead of his voice. The bond between them grew stronger each day. He could feel the dragon's emotions like echoes of his own ancient grief, burning rage, and slowly, carefully, the first fragile seeds of hope. Nari became his teacher in other ways. She had spent 5 years watching the Drakari from above, mapping their movements, learning their weaknesses. She showed Do-hyun the hidden paths through the mountains, the places where human eyes could see without being seen. But they were not alone. 17 Skyblaze dragons lived in the forbidden peaks. Each one had lost family to the Drakari. Each one had spent centuries hiding, waiting, mourning. When Erthanos told them about the human who had climbed the mountain and earned his trust, they came to see for themselves. Do-hyun stood before them in a cavern of ice and fire. They were magnificent and terrifying dragons of silver and bronze and deep red, their eyes burning with ancient power. Any one of them could have killed him with a single breath. Instead, they listened. The Drakari think we are broken, Do-hyun said. They think the dragons are defeated and the humans are cattle. They have forgotten what we can do when we fight together. He looked at each dragon in turn, meeting their ancient gazes without fear. I'm not asking you to serve me. I'm asking you to remember what you lost, and help me take it back. One by one, the dragons bowed their heads. Not in submission, in agreement. They had waited 800 years for this moment. They would not wait any longer. But Do-hyun knew that 17 dragons were not enough. The Drakari had warships in orbit, ground forces in every city, and weapons that could kill from miles away. A direct attack would fail. They needed something more. They needed the slaves. Nari could move through the lower tunnels without being detected. She had done it for years, watching the mines from the shadows, never revealing herself. Now she had a mission. Find the resistance and make contact. The resistance existed. Do-hyun had always known it, even when he was a slave. Small acts of sabotage, whispered plans, secret meetings in the deepest tunnels. The Drakari thought they had crushed every spark of rebellion. But they were wrong. Humans did not stop fighting just because they were in chains. The leader of the resistance was a woman named Yuna. She was older than Do-hyun, harder, with eyes that had seen too much death. She had been organizing the slaves for years, building a network of spies and saboteurs that stretched through every mine on Korath. When Nari found her and told her about the man who had bonded with the Skyblaze King, Yuna did not believe it. "It's a trap," she said. "The Drakari are testing us." "It's not a trap," Nari replied. "I've seen him fly. I've seen the dragon bow to him. This is real, Yuna. This is our chance." Yuna was silent for a long moment. Then she asked the only question that mattered. "What does he want?" Nari smiled. "He wants to burn the Empire down. And he needs your help to do it." 3 weeks later, Do-hyun descended from the peaks to meet with Yuna in person. They met in a hidden cavern deep beneath the mines, a place the Drakari had never found. Yuna brought 20 of her most trusted people. Do-hyun brought Nari, and a promise. "The Victory Festival," he said. "It happens in 2 months. The overseers will be drunk. The orbital defenses will be running on skeleton crews. That's when we strike." He laid out the plan. The slaves would sabotage the 3 voidstone refineries that powered the Drakari fleet. Without voidstone, their ships were useless. At the same time, the communication relays would be destroyed, cutting the planet off from the rest of the Empire. "When the explosions light up the sky," Do-hyun said, "the dragons will descend. We'll hit the military bases first, then the slave compounds. By dawn, Korath will be free." Yuna studied him with those hard, careful eyes. "You're asking us to risk everything on one night. If we fail, they'll kill us all." "They're already killing us," Do-hyun said. "Slowly. Every day. At least this way, we die fighting." A murmur ran through the gathered slaves. Do-hyun saw fear in their faces, but he also saw something else. He saw the same fire he had carried in his own heart for 11 years. "I was a slave in Tunnel 7, he continued. "I watched my best friend die because an overseer wanted to make an example. I climbed this mountain with nothing but rage and a prayer. And I found something the Drakari forgot existed." He met each person's eyes, one by one. "They call us weak because we die easily. But we've been dying for generations, and we're still here. That's not weakness. That's strength they can't even imagine." Yuna was quiet for a long time. The other slaves waited, barely breathing. Finally, she spoke. "I've been fighting this war since I was a child. I've lost friends, family, everything. Part of me gave up hope years ago." She stood and walked toward Do-hyun until they were face to face. "But if there's even a chance you're telling the truth, if there's even a small possibility we could actually win, then I'll burn beside you." She extended her hand. Do-hyun took it. "Then let's give them a night they'll never forget," he said. The next 2 months were a blur of preparation. Yuna's network spread the plan through the mines like wildfire. Weapons were stolen and hidden. Explosives were built from mining chemicals. Escape routes were mapped and memorized. Above the clouds, Do-hyun trained with the dragons. They practiced formations, attack patterns, and communication. Earthanos taught him how to coordinate multiple dragons in battle, how to read the wind and use it to their advantage. At night, Do-hyun would sit on the summit and look down at the mines far below. He could see the glow of the furnaces, the tiny lights of the slave compounds. Thousands of people were down there, waiting, hoping, preparing for the fight of their lives. "Are you ready?" Nari asked one evening, sitting beside him. "No," Do-hyun admitted. "I'm terrified. But I'd rather be terrified and free then comfortable, and enslaved. Nari nodded. Erthanos told me something interesting. He said humans burn brighter than any species he's ever known. We live short lives, but we live them with such intensity. She smiled. He said that's why the Drakari will never understand us. They're cold-blooded. They think in centuries. They can't comprehend beings who will sacrifice everything for a single moment of freedom. Do-hyun looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies were still fighting, still surviving, still hoping. They didn't know about Korath. They didn't know about the dragons, but they would. Soon, the whole galaxy would know. 2 more days, he said. 2 more days, and everything changes. Nari put her hand on his shoulder. Whatever happens, it was worth it. You gave us something we haven't had in a long time. Is this reasons? I will Stanley. I will Stanley. I will Stanley put it. Will Stanley, 80. Duncombe. Will Stanley. Will Stanley. Will Stanley. What's that? A reason to believe. Do-hyun closed his eyes and let the mountain wind wash over him. In 2 days, he would either be free or dead. Either way, the Drakari would learn to fear humans again. The night of the Victory Festival, the Drakari celebrated their conquest of 12 star systems. Torches burned in every city. Music echoed through the streets. The overseers drank and feasted while the slaves were locked in their compounds, forgotten as always. On the balcony of the central mine complex, Overseer Vrakos raised a goblet filled with wine the color of blood. Around him, other Drakari officers laughed and boasted about their conquests. Below them, the volcano rumbled quietly, as it always did. None of them looked up at the sky. At exactly midnight, the first refinery exploded. The blast lit up the horizon like a second sun. Blue fire, voidstone fire shot into the air, painting the clouds with terrible beauty. Before the Drakari could react, the second refinery detonated, then the third. Alarms screamed across the planet. Officers scrambled for their weapons. Communication officers tried to contact the orbital stations, but their signals met only static. The relay towers had been destroyed minutes before. In the slave compounds, the locks clicked open. Yuna had been busy. For 2 months, her people had been smuggling keys, disabling security systems, and preparing for this moment. Now, as the sky burned with voidstone fire, thousands of slaves poured out of their cells. They were armed with stolen weapons, mining tools, and 11 years of rage. The guards in the compounds were overwhelmed within minutes. Most of them were drunk from the festival celebrations. Those who weren't were outnumbered 100 to 1. The slaves showed them the same mercy the Drakari had shown to Siwu, none at all. And then the dragons came. From the volcanic peaks, 17 suns descended on wings of flame. They dove through the clouds like meteors, their scales gleaming with inner fire, their roars shaking the very foundations of the planet. At their head flew the largest and most terrible of them all, the Skyblaze King, Erthanos, with a human rider on his back. Do-hyun felt the wind tear at his face as they dove. The bond between him and Erthanos was stronger than ever. He could feel the dragon's joy, his fury, his 800 years of grief finally transforming into action. They moved as one being, human and dragon united by purpose. The military base first, Do-hyun said through their mental link. Take out their ground forces before they can organize. Erthanos roared in agreement. The Drakari military base was a fortress of metal and stone, bristling with weapons. When the dragons appeared above it, the soldiers tried to fire their cannons into the sky, but they were too slow, too confused, too shocked by what they were seeing. Dragon fire is not like ordinary fire. It burns hotter than plasma, cuts through metal like water through sand. When Erthanos opened his jaws and released his flame, the base's defenses melted like ice in summer. The other dragons followed, their combined assault turning the fortress into an inferno. Soldiers ran screaming from the burning buildings. Some tried to surrender, some tried to fight. It didn't matter. The dragons remembered every child that had been taken, every mate that had been killed, every century of slavery and grief. Tonight, they collected their debt in blood. Across the planet, similar scenes unfolded. The slaves had risen everywhere, coordinated by Yuna's network. Communication towers burned. Weapons depots exploded. The Drakari Empire on Korath was collapsing from within, while dragons burned it from above. But Do-hyun had one more target: Vrakos. He found the overseer trying to flee the central mine complex. The balcony where Vrakos had stood celebrating was now covered in ash and broken glass. The Drakari officer was running toward a landing pad, desperate to reach a shuttle that could take him to orbit. He never made it. Urthanos landed in front of him, blocking his escape. The dragon's wings spread wide, casting shadows across the plaza. His golden eyes burned with cold fury. Vrakos stumbled backward, tripped, and fell. He looked up at the massive dragon, then at the figure sliding down from its back. When he recognized Do-hyun, the slave from Tunnel 7, the one who had watched his friend die, his yellow eyes went wide with disbelief. "Impossible," Vrakos hissed. "You should be dead. You should have died in the upper caves." Do-hyun walked toward him slowly. He was not the same man who had crawled through the darkness 6 months ago. He was stronger, harder, and his eyes held a fire that matched Urthanos' own. "You killed my friend," he said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "You crushed his throat while I watched. Do you remember?" Vrakos tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't support him. He was just a slave. He was nothing. His name was Siwoo. Do-hyun stopped a few feet away. He had dreams. He had a family once, before your people took them. He used to tell jokes to make the children laugh. He shared his food when he was starving. He was kind and brave and good. His voice hardened. "And you called him nothing." Urthanos lowered his head until his great golden snout was inches from Vrakos's face. The dragon's voice rumbled through the plaza, projected into every Drakari mind within a mile. "Do you remember them?" Urthanos asked. "All the slaves you worked to death? The children you threw into the disposal pits? The humans you treated like animals?" Vrakos was shaking now. He had never felt fear like this, true, absolute fear of something more powerful than himself. "Please," he begged. "I was following orders. I was just doing my duty." "So were we," Do-hyun said. "When we suffered in silence. When we carried our dead to the pits. When we let you believe you had broken us." He looked down at the creature who had haunted his nightmares for 11 years. "But here's the thing about humans, Vrakos. We remember. And we don't forgive." He nodded to Urthanos. The dragon's fire was quick. By dawn, the dragon mines were free. The fighting continued for 3 more days as pockets of Drakari resistance were hunted down and destroyed. The orbital stations, cut off from communication and terrified of the dragons, eventually surrendered. When the last Drakari flag was torn down, a sound rose from the surface of Korath that had not been heard in generations. Cheering, laughing, crying, humans celebrating their freedom. Do-hyun stood on the summit where he had first met Urthanos, looking down at the world he had helped liberate. Nari stood beside him, along with Yuna and a dozen other leaders of the rebellion. Behind them, the 17 dragons rested on the volcanic rocks, their scales gleaming in the light of the twin suns. "It's over," Yuna said. She sounded like she couldn't quite believe it. "After all these years, it's actually over." "No," Do-hyun said quietly. "It's just beginning." He pointed to the sky, where the stars were fading in the morning light. "Korath is one planet. The Drakari have thousands. Our people are still out there, enslaved, scattered, fighting. They don't know what happened here. They don't know it's possible to win." Nari nodded slowly. "So we tell them. We do more than tell them." Do-hyun turned to face the others. "We help them. Every mine, every slave world, every place where our people are suffering, we go there. We teach them what we learned. We give them hope." Urthanos raised his head, his golden eyes meeting Do-hyun's. "It will be a long war, little flame. You may not live to see the end." "Maybe not," Do-hyun agreed. "But someone will. And when they do, they'll know that it started here. They'll know that a slave climbed a mountain and found a dragon. They'll know that humans and dragons fought together and won. He smiled a real smile. Perhaps the first one since Siwu died. Oh. Crinner. Crinner 1700. That's worth any price. He climbed onto Earthanos' back for the last time as a mere survivor. When they rose into the sky, he would be something more. A symbol. A legend. A promise that chains could be broken and empires could fall. Where do we begin? Nari called up to him. Do-Hyun looked at the stars, at all the worlds waiting to be freed. Everywhere, he said. We begin everywhere. Earthanos spread his wings, and 17 dragons rose with him, their roars echoing across the newly liberated planet. Below them, humans looked up and cheered, not just for their own freedom, but for the future that had finally become possible. The Skyblaze King carried his rider into the dawn, and across the galaxy, the Drakari Empire began to tremble.